never happens all at once. Growing up too fast begins in moments so small, so quiet, that even you didn't realize what was happening. Maybe you're 6, maybe 8, maybe 10, but you remember the feeling. You're standing in a kitchen, or a bedroom, or a doorway you weren't supposed to hear through, watching a parent unravel in front of you. Their face is tired, their voice is sharp, their sadness leaks out sideways, and without anyone saying a word, something inside you whispers, "If I don't hold this together, everything will fall apart." This is the moment childhood ends, not because you chose to grow up, but because no one around you stayed big enough for you to stay small. And so, piece by piece, you begin to disappear, not outwardly. Outwardly you look fine, but internally, a war begins. A war between the child you were and the adult you were forced to become. Today, we're going deep into the psychology of the child who grew up too fast and the adult they became, because this story isn't just a memory, it's a blueprint that still shapes your life. Phase 1. The disappearing child. At first, you adapt. Children are masters of survival. You learn to make your voice softer, your presence smaller, your needs quieter. You become the peacekeeper, the helper, the responsible one, the old soul. People praise you. You're so mature, you're so patient, you're so independent. But no one asks the question that matters. What did you lose to become this way? Because growing up too fast isn't a personality trait. It's a wound that learned how to function. Psychologists call it emotional parentification, when a child steps into roles meant for adults: the comforter, the diplomat, the protector, the emotional sponge, and every time you show up for someone else, a part of you drifts further from the child who needed someone to show up for you. Phase 2. How the brain adapts. This isn't just emotional, it's neurological. A child who grows up too fast develops hypervigilance, the constant scanning for tone shifts, sighs, slammed doors, or the slightest sign that someone might break again. Your nervous system becomes a detective, your body becomes a warning system, your mind becomes a shield. You don't think, you anticipate, you don't express, you manage, you don't ask for help, you become the one everyone else depends on. The tragic part? People think this makes you strong, but strength built on fear isn't strength. It's self-erasure. Phase 3. The adult who can't stop surviving. Fast forward 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You're an adult now, but that child, the one who grew up too fast, is still running your life, and it shows up in ways you don't even recognize. You apologize for needing anything, as if your existence inconvinces the world. You struggle to rest. Rest feels like danger. Stillness feels suspicious. Your body waits for the next explosion that never comes. You become hyper-independent, not out of pride, but out of fear that relying on someone will lead to disappointment, chaos, or abandonment. You confuse love with responsibility. If you're not fixing someone, you don't know your value. You feel guilty when you're happy. Joy feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things once hurt you. And the most hidden pattern: you choose people you can take care of, because being needed feels safer than being loved. This is the adulthood inherited from a stolen childhood. Phase 4. The inner child's cry. Under all the competence, all the calmness, all the "I'm fine," there is a child who was overwhelmed, a child who was afraid, a child who needed protection and instead became the protector. And that child is still waiting, not for perfection, not for strength, not for you to fix everything, but simply for someone, finally, to say, "You never should have carried that. You were just a child. I'm here now." Because the inner child doesn't want productivity, they want presence. Phase 5. How the trauma repeats without realizing it. Without healing, the pattern repeats in subtle, heartbreaking ways. You stay in one-sided friendships because doing everything feels normal. You over-explain and over-apologize because conflict used to be dangerous. You freeze when someone asks what you want because you were trained not to want anything. You date people who need rescuing because caretaking feels like love. You attract emotional chaos because your nervous system mistakes intensity for connection. These aren't flaws, they're survival behaviors learned by a child trying to make an unsafe world feel safe. But survival mode isn't meant to last forever. There comes a moment when you realize you're no longer that child, but your body still thinks you are. Phase 6. The turning point. Healing doesn't begin when you become stronger. Healing begins when you finally get tired of being strong, when the mask cracks, when the exhaustion catches up, when you realize that your independence was never freedom. It was armor, and slowly, gently, you begin to turn inward and ask, what did I need back then that I never got? You might hear answers like, I needed to play. I needed someone to notice my sadness. I needed comfort, not responsibility. I needed to be held, not depended on. I needed adults to act like adults. I needed to be a child. And as painful as it is, the moment you hear that voice is the moment healing truly starts. Phase 7. Reparenting. Returning to the child you left behind. This is shadow work, not the mystical kind, but the emotional kind. It's the slow, steady process of becoming the person your younger self needed. It's saying, I see you, I hear you, I'm not abandoning you. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. It's letting yourself rest, letting yourself feel, letting yourself be imperfect, letting yourself be human. It's honoring your limits, setting boundaries, choosing people who choose you. It's learning, maybe for the first time, that love doesn't have to be earned. Love can simply be given. Phase 8. The new path. Growing up too fast taught you resilience, but it robbed you of tenderness. Healing is reclaiming the parts of you that were lost. Your playfulness, your softness, your vulnerability, your curiosity, your right to not have every answer. You finally get to rewrite the script. You finally get to grow up the right way. Not through chaos, not through pressure, not through emotional labor, but through truth, safety, connection, and choice. Because you didn't get a childhood, but you still get a future. And this time, you get to shape it. You are no longer the child who had to be strong. You are the adult who finally gets to rest. Hey, close your eyes for a moment. Not literally, just internally. I want you to imagine the child you once were, not the version you learned to perform, not the good kid, not the fixer, the caretaker, the little adult. I mean the real child, the one underneath all of that. Picture them standing in front of you. Look at their face, their small hands, their nervous smile, their tired eyes, eyes that have seen way too much for their age. Notice how they shift their weight, how they're already scanning your expression, how they're trying to figure out what you need from them before they even let themselves breathe. Now, very gently, kneel down to their level and say this, out loud or in your mind. You didn't deserve any of that. Watch how their eyes widen because no one has ever told them that before. Then say, you were not supposed to fix everything. You were not supposed to carry adults. You were not the problem. You were just a child. And notice, for the first time, how their shoulders loosen, how their body softens, how they finally look less like a soldier and more like a kid. Now offer them your hand, not as another burden, not as another responsibility, but as someone who sees them clearly, as someone who finally understands. Tell them, I'm here now. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Maybe they cry, maybe you do, maybe both. Let that happen, because that emotion, that release, that shaking in your chest, that's not weakness. That's the child inside you finally being held by the adult you've become. And for the first time in your life, they feel safe,